They told you to be nice, to stay quiet, to smile when spoken to. From the moment you learned how to walk, they taught you to obey, to conform, to bend in the face of pressure. And now you sit here wondering why you feel powerless, why you constantly crave validation, why you fold under the weight of other people's expectations. It's because you believe them. You believe the lies. Weakness is taught, not inherited. You weren't born afraid to speak your truth. But over time, every be careful and every don't do that chipped away at the raw edge of your spirit. Society doesn't raise lions, it raises sheep, docile, predictable, and easy to control. Carl Jung understood this better than anyone. He said that to truly master yourself, you must first reject the comforting illusions of the herd. You must stop mistaking compliance for morality. Stop confusing silence for virtue. You've been taught that humility means downplaying your strength, hiding your ambition, and apologizing for wanting more. But that's not humility. That's surrender. Jung warned that when you suppress your natural instincts, your hunger, your curiosity, your aggression, they don't disappear. They rot. They turn into shadows that control you from the dark corners of your mind, leaving you anxious, resentful, and secretly ashamed. Look around you. Most people are slaves to this quiet conditioning. They worship at the altar of likability. They fear conflict because it might reveal who they really are. They think blending in will keep them safe, but it only buries them deeper in mediocrity. The world doesn't remember the agreeable. It remembers those who dare to stand apart. To build inner power, the first step is rebellion. Not loud, chaotic rebellion, but quiet, calculated refusal. Refusal to let someone else's approval define you. Refusal to bow to the unwritten rules that tell you what you can or cannot desire. Refusal to let fear dress itself up as responsibility. Do you want to know why you give away your power? It's because you talk too much. You explain yourself. You seek permission for your own existence. Every time you over-justify your choices, you send a silent message to the world. I am unsure. I am weak. I need you to accept me before I can accept myself. That is how they control you. Not with force, but with your own willingness to be understood. Machiavelli, the cold strategist, would smirk at this. He would tell you that no one truly respects the one who always seeks approval. Power doesn't ask to be liked. Power is simply recognized. The moment you stop asking for validation, you begin to reclaim what you gave away. Think of the last time you felt small in a room. Maybe it was during a meeting or when someone questioned your worth. Your instinct was to defend yourself, wasn't it? To explain, to reassure, to soften your voice. That's your training speaking. But what if, instead of explaining, you said nothing? What if you let your silence become a mirror, forcing them to confront their own insecurities? People respect what they can't easily read. Rejecting weakness doesn't mean turning into a monster. It means stopping the self-betrayal. It means drawing a line and saying, "This is who I am," without shrinking when the world frowns. It means realizing that every time you bend to make someone else comfortable, you lose a piece of yourself. Jung believed that the foundation of self-mastery is individuation, the process of becoming whole by accepting all parts of yourself, not just the polite ones. You are not meant to live small. Every time you swallow your truth, you dim the light that could cut through the fog of mediocrity. Every time you choose comfort over courage, you reinforce the bars of your own mental cage. And here's the brutal truth. No one is coming to set you free. No one is going to hand you the permission slip to be powerful. You must take it. The first battle is internal. You need to look at the version of yourself that's addicted to being liked and decide whether you can kill it, or at least silence it long enough to step into who you really are. Power begins where approval ends. Look at history. The emperors who shaped empires didn't ask if people approved of their vision. The thinkers who changed the world didn't wait for permission to speak. They moved forward, and the world followed or resisted, but it never ignored them. That's what happens when you stop bending. You become impossible to ignore. You think strength means having all the answers, but it doesn't. Strength means refusing to be diminished by questions. It means holding your ground when everything in you screams to run. It's not about shouting louder. It's about standing so still, so unshaken that the noise of others fades around you. Jung would tell you, stop outsourcing your power. Stop waiting for the world to crown you. Claim your crown by rejecting the lie that you need to be anything other than who you are, raw, flawed, but unbroken. You've been told to look on the bright side, to hide your darker emotions as if they're shameful stains that must be scrubbed out before anyone sees them. But Jung believed the opposite. The parts of you that scare you most, your anger, jealousy, fear, lust, are not weaknesses. They are power, raw and unfiltered, waiting to be harnessed. This is the shadow. Your shadow isn't your enemy. It's the version of you that never learned to play by society's rules. It's the blunt, unpolished voice in your head that you silence because you're afraid of what it might say. But here's the truth. Until you face your shadow, you will never control it. You'll live as its servant, lashing out when it erupts, shrinking when it whispers. True self-mastery begins when you stop pretending that you are all light and perfection. Think of the times you lost control. That moment when a single word from someone shattered your calm and sent you spiraling. That wasn't random. That was your shadow, unacknowledged and untamed, seizing the steering wheel. It's like ignoring a wolf chained in the corner of your mind. It grows hungrier and wilder every day you deny its existence, and one day it breaks loose. Jung called for integration, not suppression. You don't fight the shadow by locking it away. You invite it into the light, study it, understand it. The dangerous man isn't the one who feels no anger. It's the one who doesn't know when his anger will strike. Power comes from knowing your darkness so well that no one can weaponize it against you. Imagine walking into a room where everyone wears masks of politeness, where every smile hides a secret agenda. You'll notice the difference immediately if you've confronted your own darkness. Why? Because you can see through theirs. You'll recognize the tension in their voices, the hidden power plays, the quiet manipulations. When you know your shadow, you become immune to theirs. Your shadow also holds your forgotten strengths. Maybe you were told as a child that you were too stubborn, too opinionated, or too intense, so you buried those traits. But now as an adult, you wonder why you feel so bland, so ineffective. It's because your sharp edges, the very ones that could cut through this world, are locked in a box labeled bad. Jung would tell you, open the box, let them out. There is no greatness in being harmless. There is only invisibility. Consider the predators of history, men and women who rose to power not because they were loved, but because they embraced their full spectrum of emotion and intent. They understood that anger, when controlled, becomes focus. That fear, when acknowledged, becomes strategy. That desire, when channeled, becomes drive. The weak try to erase their shadow. The strong turn it into a weapon. You've been conditioned to see your shadow as shameful because the system fears those who integrate it. A person who knows both their light and dark is unpredictable. They cannot be easily shamed or manipulated because they've already stared into the parts of themselves that most people run from. That kind of person is dangerous and free. Ask yourself, when was the last time you really sat alone with your mind? No distractions, no phone, no numbing habits. Just you, staring at your own thoughts. Did you notice how quickly discomfort rises? How quickly you want to escape? That's the shadow knocking, asking to be heard. But instead of listening, you scroll, you talk, you drown it out. Every time you do that, you hand over your power. The process of facing the shadow isn't pretty. It will reveal things about you that you don't want to admit. Pettiness, insecurity, old wounds you thought you buried. But this confrontation is liberation, because once you see it, it loses its hold on you. No one can use it to control you anymore. You'll stop flinching when someone points out your flaws because you already know them. You own them. Machiavelli would call this the art of becoming untouchable. People can only exploit what you hide. When you drag your darkness into the open, they have nothing left to attack. You become like a fortress with no blind spots. There's also power in knowing the shadow of others. When you face your own, you develop a strange clarity. You can sense the buried anger in a colleague's smile, the desperate hunger in a rival's kindness, and once you see their shadow, you can predict them, control them. While they're busy fighting themselves, you move like a ghost through their defenses. Think of this as psychological warfare, but the first war is with yourself. You must learn to watch your thoughts the way a hunter watches the forest, alert, patient, unafraid. When the shadow rises, you don't run. You study it. You ask, what do you want from me? What are you teaching me? That's how you turn your darkest impulses into your greatest sources of strength. Jung once said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being whole. And the whole person, the one who can stand in both shadow and light, is unstoppable. When you accept the shadow, you no longer fear yourself. You stop fighting invisible wars in your own mind. You gain the calm, controlled presence that others sense but can't explain. And that presence, that's power. The kind of power that no one can give you and no one can take away. You talk too much. You think explaining yourself will protect you, but every extra word leaks power like blood from an open wound. Jung understood that silence is not weakness. It's a weapon. The loudest voice in the room is rarely the strongest. The strongest is the one who can sit in silence, forcing others to fill the void, exposing their insecurities with every word they can't stop saying. You believe presence comes from being noticed, but that's a lie. True presence comes from control, the ability to command attention without chasing it. You don't need to raise your voice to be heard. You need to radiate the kind of stillness that others can't look away from, the kind that makes them wonder what you're holding back. When you master silence, you stop telegraphing your fears. Most people reveal everything through their nervous chatter, their doubts, their need for validation, their desperation to be liked. They ramble, hoping someone will tell them they're enough. But power is never desperate. Power waits. Power speaks only when the silence is heavier than the words. Look at history. Leaders who commanded loyalty didn't need to beg for it. They cultivated an aura of mystery. Think of the generals who walked into battle without shouting orders because a single gesture was enough to send armies moving. Machiavelli would call this the art of being unreadable. The less they can predict you, the more they fear you. You over-explain because you fear being misunderstood. But here's the truth. The powerful are often misunderstood, and they don't care. They don't chase clarity. They let others twist themselves into knots trying to figure them out. In your silence, you gain leverage. While others fill the air with noise, you observe, calculate, and strike only when the moment demands it. Try this. The next time someone challenges you, resist the urge to defend yourself. Let the silence hang heavy between you. Watch them squirm as they try to fill it. This discomfort is power. It shifts the dynamic in your favor because silence forces the other person to reveal their hand first. It's a psychological mirror. They project their assumptions, their weaknesses, their intent, and you collect the data without saying a word. Presence isn't just about silence. It's about how you carry yourself when you choose to speak. Jung believed that words carry energy, energy that can either dissipate your strength or sharpen it like a blade. Speak less, but with precision. Every word should land like a hammer, deliberate and unshakable. The man who speaks with restraint is feared far more than the one who drowns the room in endless chatter. Do you know why some people seem magnetic? It's not because they're the most charismatic or the most attractive. It's because they understand the power of being slightly out of reach. They don't show all their cards. They don't try to impress you with constant noise. They hold something back, and that restraint creates a gravitational pull. You find yourself wanting to know more. You lean in. That's presence. But presence also requires discipline. You cannot radiate power if your mind is restless and scattered. Silence begins in your thoughts. When your inner world is chaotic, it shows. People can feel it in your tone, your posture, your words. Jung believed that mastering the inner dialogue, silencing the constant self-criticism and chatter, is what allows a person to project calm authority. If you can't sit quietly with yourself, you'll never hold the room. The world is addicted to noise. Look at social media. Everyone screaming to be heard. Everyone desperate for attention. And what happens? Their voices blur into static. The loud are forgotten. The measured, however, remain unforgettable. Because when someone who rarely speaks finally says something, the whole room listens. Ask yourself, when was the last time your silence made someone uncomfortable? When was the last time you resisted the urge to fill every pause? That discomfort, that tension, it's your greatest ally. It makes you unpredictable. It makes others overthink. And in a world where predictability is weakness, unpredictability is survival. Think of the courtroom, the battlefield, the boardroom. The one who speaks last or not at all often controls the entire game. Machiavelli wrote that power is not always about what you do, but about what you don't do, what you withhold. Every withheld word is a test of who will break first. Start practicing this today. Speak less than you want to. Observe more than you react. Let your presence fill the space instead of your voice. When you walk into a room, don't rush to announce yourself. Let your stillness do the talking. And when you do speak, speak with weight, never more than needed, never less than necessary. Silence and presence are not about being invisible. They're about being undeniable. Jung's philosophy wasn't about retreating from the world, but mastering the self so fully that the world can't help but take notice. And when you achieve that, you'll discover something profound. The less you try to be seen, the more they'll strain to see you. Loyalty is a beautiful word, but it can be a trap. You think staying attached, whether to people, habits, or outdated beliefs, makes you noble, but often it just makes you weak. Carl Jung understood this brutal truth. What you cling to owns you. The illusions you refuse to release are the chains you carry, and they weigh down every step you take. Look at your life. How many of your daily actions are driven by obligation, by fear of disappointing someone, by the need to maintain appearances? You tell yourself it's loyalty, but deep down, you know it's just fear disguised as virtue. You're afraid of being alone. You're afraid of being judged. You're afraid of cutting away the very things that are draining you. But here's the hard truth. If you don't cut them, they will cut you. Toxic attachments are seductive. They promise comfort, routine, predictability. But predictability is poison for growth. Jung would tell you that the psyche thrives on evolution, on becoming more whole with every challenge. When you chain yourself to people or systems that demand your submission, you are feeding a part of yourself that craves safety over strength. And what is safety, really? It's a gilded cage. It's the slow death of potential. Think of the so-called friends who drain you, the ones who demand your time, your energy, your attention, but give nothing back. You hold on to them because you think letting go would be cruel. But what's crueler? Freeing yourself, or letting them keep feeding on your spirit until you're hollow. The same goes for family expectations, old jobs, even identities you've outgrown. Every time you stay in a role that no longer fits, you hand over your power to something that doesn't deserve it. Machiavelli would laugh at your sentimentality. He would say that power belongs to those who know when to cut ties, when to burn bridges without looking back. Not recklessly, not out of anger, but out of clarity. You don't rise by carrying dead weight. You rise by choosing what and who truly deserves your loyalty. And then there's the loyalty to your own past. How many times have you said, "This is just who I am"? You repeat your mistakes like rituals because you're loyal to an old story about yourself, a story written by your parents, your teachers, your past failures. But Jung believed that self-mastery means rewriting the script. You are not who you were 5 years ago. You are not bound to the limitations you once believed. Clinging to that old identity is just another form of fear. Cutting away dead weight doesn't always mean cutting people. Sometimes it means cutting habits that have seduced you into weakness. Maybe it's the nightly scrolling that robs you of sleep. Maybe it's the habit of saying yes when you want to say no. Maybe it's the way you keep rehearsing the same excuses to avoid discomfort. These habits seem small, but they accumulate like rust on a blade. They dull you until you forget that you were ever sharp. The process of cutting is brutal, but it's liberating. You will lose people. You will lose comfort. But what you gain is focus, and focus is power. When you are no longer weighed down by obligations that don't matter, your mind becomes a weapon, precise, clear, unstoppable. Jung called this individuation, the process of separating from the collective noise and becoming truly yourself. And to do that, you must be willing to stand alone. Ask yourself, who drains me? What belief do I hold that no longer serves me? What habit makes me weaker every time I repeat it? Write them down, stare at them, and then imagine what your life would feel like without them. That feeling, that sudden lightness, is the first taste of freedom. The world will guilt you for cutting away. They'll call you cold, selfish, ruthless. Let them. These words are weapons of the weak designed to keep you compliant. The truth is, you cannot serve others if you're carrying chains. You cannot build anything worthwhile while your hands are tied to people or systems that sabotage you. The moment you decide to cut away, you become untouchable. Not because you have no ties, but because every tie you keep is chosen, not imposed. Think of the great leaders, philosophers, warriors. They didn't climb to their power by pleasing everyone. They made sacrifices. They severed ties that didn't align with their vision. Jung believed this is the ultimate test of inner power, the ability to choose who and what walks beside you and to walk away from everything else without hesitation. If you can't cut the dead weight, you will never rise. It's that simple. And if you hesitate, remember this. The very things you refuse to let go of are often the things holding you back the most. Letting go isn't betrayal, it's survival. It's the art of clearing the path so you can finally see how far you were meant to go. Desire is fire. It can warm you or it can burn you alive. Most people are slaves to their cravings. They chase them blindly, hoping fulfillment will come from the next thrill, the next purchase, the next burst of applause. But Jung would tell you that real power is not found in denying desire, nor in being consumed by it. Real power comes from mastering it, turning that fire into a controlled blaze rather than a wildfire that devours everything in its path. Look around you. Everyone is chasing something: money, validation, comfort, love, the need to be seen. They'll twist themselves into whatever shape society demands if it means satisfying that craving. They think desire makes them free, but it makes them predictable. And in the game of power, predictability is death. A man who cannot control his hunger will always be controlled by someone who can. Ask yourself, what drives you? Is it approval? Status? The fear of being left behind? Until you name your cravings, they own you. Jung believed that desires, like the shadow, must be brought into consciousness before they can be transformed. The unacknowledged craving, the one you refuse to admit to yourself, will always be the one that breaks you. Think of the leaders who rose too fast. They were brilliant, cunning, capable. But their desire for more, for power, for recognition, was so transparent that it became their weakness. Their enemies knew exactly how to bait them. History is littered with the ruins of people who believed they could chase endlessly without consequence. Nero burned Rome because he wanted the world to see his glory. Enron collapsed because greed blinded its architects to the walls closing in. Desire is not the enemy. Blind desire is. A mind ruled by hunger will always be manipulated by those who understand how to feed it. Machiavelli would whisper that the one who controls your cravings controls you. The ruler, the CEO, the cunning friend, they don't need to fight you if they know what you'll sell your soul for. The answer is not suppression. If you pretend you don't want anything, you'll lie to yourself until the craving bursts out in ways you can't control. The answer is control, directing that energy towards something greater than impulse. It's like harnessing a river. Left wild, it floods everything in its path. Directed, it powers entire cities. Start by watching your habits. The endless scrolling, the empty conversations, the need to check in for approval. These are all small cravings, and they reveal where you're leaking energy. Every moment you spend chasing shallow desires is a moment your enemies, seen or unseen, grow stronger. Jung's path to self-mastery demanded that you reclaim this energy and funnel it toward building something enduring. The man who can sit with his desire without acting on it is far more powerful than the man who must always have what he wants. Think of the samurai. They understood desire and fear as twin forces that, if left untrained, would cloud the mind in battle. They learned restraint, not to kill desire, but to bend it into focus. The same applies to you. Every time you resist the urge to seek validation, to buy the unnecessary, to chase a fleeting high, you sharpen your edge. You become less reactive, less predictable, more dangerous. What would it look like if you controlled your energy instead of scattering it across meaningless pursuits? It would look like clarity. It would feel like weightlifting from your mind because you'd no longer be dragged by invisible strings. You'd stop being the pawn of your cravings and start becoming the architect of your will. This mastery extends to emotions too. Rage, for example, is raw energy. Most people fear it or let it explode. But if you can hold it, if you can use it to fuel strategy rather than chaos, it becomes unstoppable. Jung believed emotions are not to be suppressed but understood, transformed into tools rather than weapons that harm their wielder. Machiavelli would go further. He'd say that controlling your desires gives you leverage over everyone who cannot. While they chase distraction, you wait. While they seek validation, you remain silent. While they burn themselves out, you gather strength. The ability to delay gratification is not just a virtue, it's a weapon of war. But this mastery requires brutal honesty. You must look at yourself and ask, what do I really want? Not what the world tells you to want. Not what makes you look good in front of others. What do you actually crave? And is that craving serving you or consuming you? Most people never ask this because they're afraid of the answer. They prefer to stay addicted to the chase rather than face the emptiness at its core. Once you know your true desire, you can channel it. You can build systems that feed it without letting it rule you. You can choose where your energy flows, and in doing so, you'll notice something remarkable. The chaos of the world no longer affects you the way it used to. The news, the opinions of others, the shifting tides of trends, all of it becomes background noise. Because you are no longer chasing, you are creating. The man who commands his energy is dangerous not because he has no desires, but because he knows exactly when and how to strike. Power is not about being invincible. It's about becoming untouchable, not because nothing can hurt you, but because nothing owns you. Jung's vision of self-mastery wasn't about building walls so high that nothing gets in. It was about building a foundation so solid that no storm can shake it. This is the final form of inner power, a self that is whole, aware, and beyond manipulation. Look at how the world operates. Every system, from politics to media to the smallest social circle, thrives on control. It whispers to you, telling you who to be, what to want, what to fear. And without realizing it, you bend. You follow the path that was laid out for you, the one that keeps you predictable. But power doesn't live in predictability. Power lives in the ability to act on your own terms, no matter how much pressure the world applies. This is where Jung's teachings separate the weak from the strong. Most people live as fragments of themselves, pieces shaped by what others expect, by the wounds they've never healed, by the desires they can't control. They're like puppets, pulled in 1,000 directions. But the self-mastered individual? They cut every string one by one until they stand alone, complete. What does it mean to be untouchable? It means you are no longer swayed by flattery or insult. Praise doesn't inflate you. Criticism doesn't destroy you. You stop living on the emotional roller coaster built by other people's opinions. You listen, but you're not owned. Machiavelli would call this standing above the crowd while moving among them, visible yet untamed, engaged yet untouchable. Imagine walking into a room where everyone is trying to be seen, to prove their worth, to grab power by force. You don't join the noise. You don't scramble. You simply stand, calm and watchful, and the room shifts towards you without even knowing why. That's what happens when you carry yourself as a fortress rather than a seeker. Your presence speaks louder than any demand for recognition. The untouchable self isn't cold or detached. It's simply free. Free from the need to be understood. Free from the compulsion to explain. Free from the endless cycle of wanting and fearing. Jung believed that when you integrate your shadow, master your desires, and cut away dead weight, you stop being ruled by the forces that rule everyone else. You move through the world as if you're not of it, aware of its games but never caught in them. Look at history's true masters of power. They weren't the ones screaming for attention. They were the ones who could wait in silence while others destroyed themselves trying to predict their next move. They understood what you must now understand. Control over others begins with control over yourself. Without that, every strategy, every plan, every attempt at influence crumbles. You can't fake this kind of power. People can sense it. They feel it when you speak, when you walk, when you simply hold their gaze. It's not arrogance. It's not loudness. It's the quiet confidence of someone who has faced their own mind and won. You can't intimidate a person who has stared down their own fear. You can't manipulate someone who knows exactly what they desire and what they don't. But reaching this point requires sacrifice. You'll have to give up the comfort of being liked by everyone. You'll have to accept that some people will misjudge you because you no longer play their games. And you'll have to embrace solitude, not as loneliness, but as strength. The fortress stands alone, but it stands unbroken. Ask yourself now, what would your life look like if you were untouchable? If no insult could shake you, if no flattery could seduce you, if no fear could make you hesitate? That is the life Jung pointed toward. A life lived with unshakable clarity, where your energy flows only where you choose and no one can redirect it without your consent. This is the endgame of self-mastery, to move through the world with a sense of quiet inevitability, to be rooted so deeply in your own truth that nothing external can uproot you. You will still face challenges. You will still feel fear, anger, even doubt, but they will no longer control you. They will pass through you like wind through stone. And when you reach this level of power, you will notice something profound. You no longer crave dominance over others. You don't need it. The man who has mastered himself doesn't need to rule the room because the room naturally gravitates toward him. People trust what they can't shake. They follow what they can't easily define. You will become both mystery and anchor, a presence that feels inevitable. This is the fortress you were meant to build, not one made of walls, but of awareness, discipline, and ruthless honesty. You won't shout about your strength. You won't need to. The world will see it in your stillness, in the way you move without seeking approval, in the way you carry your silence like a blade. Because real power is quiet. Real power doesn't chase. Real power doesn't fear. You were never meant to live small, chained by fear, approval, and craving. Carl Jung's path to self-mastery is brutal but liberating. Face your shadow, embrace your silence, cut away what weakens you, and channel your energy with precision. Each step makes you less predictable, less controllable, and more complete. In the end, you become untouchable, not by overpowering others, but by mastering yourself so completely that no one else can. This is the power the world fears and the freedom you crave. If you found this story meaningful, share it with someone who needs it. Subscribe for more insights.